The envelope arrives on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn, 47 years after Claire Beaumont last saw the man who wrote it. She's 73 years old now, sitting in her garden in Provence, surrounded by grandchildren who play among the roses she's tended for decades. Her husband Henri, kind, steady Henri, who she married at 31 and has loved in his way for 42 years, is inside making tea. Her children are visiting for the weekend. Life is full and good and normal. And then the postman delivers an envelope addressed in handwriting she hasn't seen since 1978, when she was 26 years old and in love with a man who disappeared without explanation. The envelope is yellowed with age, sealed with red wax bearing an ornate V. The postmark is from Paris, dated October 15, 2025, yesterday. But the paper looks ancient, like it's been preserved for decades. Claire's hands shake as she opens it. Inside is a letter, written in the same elegant script she remembers from love notes left on her pillow, from poetry, transcribed by candlelight, from the single goodbye note he left that said only, "Forgive me. I cannot stay. You deserve more than what I am. V." She unfolds the new letter, thick paper, ink that hasn't faded, and begins to read. And as she reads, 47 years dissolve. She's 26 again, in love. Again, heartbroken again. And finally, she understands why he left. Claire Beaumont met Vincent Moreau in a bookshop in Paris on a rainy September evening in 1977. She was 25, newly arrived from Lyon to study art conservation at the Louvre. He said he was 32, a professor of medieval history at the Sorbonne. She would learn later that both those facts were technically true but also complete lies. The bookshop was one of those cramped, ancient places on the left bank where books climbed to the ceiling and the air smelled of paper and time. Claire was searching for a text on Renaissance painting techniques when she knocked over a stack of books, sending them cascading to the floor. "Careful," said a voice behind her. "Those books are older than both of us combined." She turned to find a man crouching to help gather the fallen volumes. He was beautiful in the way that French men often are, dark hair, sharp cheekbones, eyes so dark they appeared black in the bookshop's dim light. But there was something else about him, something Claire couldn't quite name. An old soul quality. Sense that he'd seen more than most people see in a lifetime. "Thank you," Claire said, accepting the books he handed her. "I'm not usually so clumsy." Clumsy, or just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of knowledge surrounding you. He gestured to the towering shelves. "This place has that effect. Do you come here often?" The question sounded like a pickup line the moment it left her mouth. Claire blushed. But Vincent just smiled. "Every week for quite some time. I'm a collector of old books, particularly medieval manuscripts." "I'm Claire, art conservation student." Vincent, professor of history. He extended his hand. When their fingers touched, Claire felt a shock, not electrical, but something else. Recognition, maybe. Or the sense that this moment mattered in ways she didn't yet understand. "Would you like to get coffee?" Vincent asked. "I know a cafe nearby that's open late. We could discuss your studies. I find conservation fascinating. The attempt to preserve beauty against time's decay." Claire should have said no, should have recognized the intensity in his gaze as something to be wary of, should have noticed the slight chill of his hand, the way he moved through the bookshop with preternatural grace, the fact that he never seemed to blink. But she said yes, because at 25, Claire was brave and curious and ready to fall in love. And Vincent Moreau was exactly the kind of man she dreamed of. Meeting in Paris, cultured, intelligent, mysterious. She had no idea that he wasn't a man at all, that he was 247 years old, that he'd been watching her for 3 months, resisting the pull. He felt toward her, knowing that loving her would only lead to grief. She had no idea that in saying yes to coffee, she was beginning a love story that would define her life even though it would last less than 2 years. They went to Café de Flore, sat outside despite the rain, talked until midnight. Vincent told her carefully edited truths about his life. His love of history. I feel like I've lived through it. His work at the Sorbonne, teaching helps me stay connected to the modern world. His apartments in Paris and the countryside, I've accumulated property over the years. Claire told him everything, her childhood in Lyon, her mother's death when she was 16, her passion for art, her dream of restoring the great masterpieces at the Louvre. She talked, and Vincent listened with the patience of someone who'd heard 10,000 stories but found hers uniquely precious. I'm boring you, Claire said finally. Not even remotely. You're the most interesting person I've met in decades. And the way he said decades, like he meant centuries, should have been a clue. But Claire was too enchanted to notice. They exchanged numbers, made plans for dinner the following week. When Vincent walked her home through the rain-slicked Paris streets, he kissed her goodnight, with a tenderness that made Claire's heart ache. I have to warn you, Vincent said, still holding her close. I'm not a simple man. There are things about me that are complicated. If you get involved with me, it won't be easy. I'm not looking for easy, Claire replied. I'm looking for real. Then we're in trouble, Vincent murmured, because this feels very real. He kissed her again and disappeared into the night, moving faster than any normal man should move. But Claire was too dazed to question it. That was September 1977. By October, they were inseparable. By November, Claire was in love. By December, Vincent knew he'd made a terrible mistake. Because he'd fallen in love too. And loving a mortal when you're immortal is the cruelest joke the universe can play. For 14 months, Claire and Vincent built a life together that felt impossible and perfect in equal measure. Vincent courted her like a man from another era, because he was. He brought her flowers daily, roses, always roses, because he'd been alive when the language of flowers mattered. He took her to galleries and theaters and restaurants. He read poetry to her in 4 different languages. He made love to her with a reverence that suggested he'd waited lifetimes for her. Claire moved into his apartment in the Marais in January 1978. It was beautiful. High ceilings, original 18th century details, furnished with antiques that Vincent claimed were family heirlooms, but which Claire suspected he'd bought, because he'd actually lived through the eras they represented. You have exquisite taste, Claire said, running her hand over a Louis XV desk. I've had time to develop it, Vincent replied, and there was that tone again, that suggestion of vast spans of time lived through. There were oddities about Vincent that Claire noticed but explained away. He never ate in front of her. Large appetite, I eat during the day while you're at the Louvre, he'd say. She'd find evidence, dirty dishes, empty wine bottles, but never actually see him consume anything. He was cold to the touch. Poor circulation, he claimed, runs in my family. Claire would warm his hands between hers, never questioning why someone's circulation could be that poor without medical intervention. He avoided sunlight. Photosensitive skin condition, he explained. The sun gives me terrible rashes. So they became creatures of night, dinners after dark, walks through moonlit Paris, making love by candlelight. He had no photographs of himself from before 1960. I don't like being photographed, Vincent said. Vanity, perhaps, or privacy. Claire found it odd, but respected his boundaries. He knew impossible amounts of history, not just facts anyone could learn, but details. The smell of Paris during the Revolution, the sound of Napoleon's voice, the exact shade of Marie Antoinette's hair. I'm a historian, he'd say. Imagination fills in the gaps. But Claire wondered how imagination could be that specific. Still, she loved him. Loved his intelligence, his gentleness, the way he looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Loved how he supported her work at the Louvre, celebrating her small victories, comforting her through frustrations. Loved the life they were building, the future she imagined. Marriage, children, growing old together in this beautiful apartment. She didn't know Vincent couldn't give her any of that. Couldn't marry her without revealing his nature. Couldn't have children. Vampires are sterile. Couldn't grow old with her because he'd stopped aging in 1730 when he was 32 and would look 32 forever. He didn't tell her because he was selfish. Because he loved her. Because he wanted to pretend, just for a little while, that he was normal. That they could have a normal life. But by spring of 1978, Vincent knew it was ending. Claire had started talking about the future, their future, marriage, children, a house in the countryside, growing old together. All the things mortals dream of that immortals can never have. And Vincent knew he had to let her go, for her sake, before she wasted too many years on someone who couldn't give her the life she deserved. In May 1978, Vincent started planning his exit. He would leave Paris, disappear from her life, let her believe he'd abandoned her. It would hurt her. God, it would destroy them both. But it was kinder than the truth. Kinder than watching her age while he didn't. Kinder than condemning her to a life with a monster. He spent his last weeks with Claire memorizing everything. The way she laughed. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating. The way she looked. In the morning light, on the rare occasions he was still awake to see it, having stayed up all night just to watch her sleep. The way she said his name. The way she fit perfectly in his arms. He took mental photographs because he knew these memories would have to sustain him through centuries of loneliness. Because loving Claire Beaumont was the best thing he'd done in 247 years, and losing her would be the worst. On June 15, 1978, while Claire was at work at the Louvre, Vincent packed his belongings. He left the apartment exactly as it was. Furniture, books, everything Claire loved. He left it to her in a legal document she'd find later, along with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. And he left a note. Brief. Devastating. Cowardly. Forgive me. I cannot stay. You deserve more than what I am. V. Then he walked out of their apartment, out of Paris, out of Claire's life. He didn't look back. If he'd looked back, he would have stayed. And staying would have destroyed her in worse ways than leaving. Claire came home that evening to find him gone. She read the note 100 times, trying to understand. Had she done something wrong? Had he stopped loving her? Why would he leave without explanation after 14 months of what seemed like perfect love? She cried for weeks, months. Searched for him. His office at the Sorbonne was empty. His colleagues claimed never to have heard of him. His family couldn't be located because he had no family. He'd vanished like smoke, like he'd never existed. Except he had existed. The apartment full of his belongings proved it. The money in the bank account proved it. The hole in her heart proved it. Claire was 26 years old, abandoned by the love of her life, with no explanation and no closure. She wanted to hate Vincent Moreau, wanted to burn his books, sell his furniture, erase every trace of him. But she couldn't, because despite everything, she still loved him. And part of her, the part that had felt that shock of recognition when they first touched, believed he'd loved her too. She just didn't understand why he'd left. And she wouldn't. Not for 47 years. Claire Beaumont rebuilt her life from the ruins Vincent left behind. She kept the apartment, lived among his books and furniture, unable to let go. continued her work at the Louvre, throwing herself into restoration projects that demanded all her focus. Tried dating other men, kind men, normal men, men who stayed. In 1980, she met Henri Dubois. He was a doctor, practical and grounded, the opposite of mysterious Vincent. Henri didn't quote poetry or take her to midnight galleries. He took her to Sunday markets and family dinners. He was warm to the touch, ate enthusiastically, loved sunlight. He was alive in all the ways Vincent had seemed half dead. Henri fell in love with Claire. Patiently, persistently, knowing she carried someone else in her heart but willing to wait. In 1983, Claire said yes when Henri proposed. Not because she'd stopped loving Vincent, she never would, but because she was 31 years old and wanted children and a future. Because Henri was good and kind and real. Because loving a ghost wasn't living. They married in a small ceremony. Moved to a house in Provence. Had 3 children, Sophie in 1984, Thomas in 1986, Marie in 1989. Built a life that was good if not passionate, comfortable if not consuming. Claire was a good wife to Henri. Faithful, present, grateful for his steadiness. But late at night, when everyone slept, she'd sometimes take out the box she kept hidden in her closet. The box containing Vincent's goodbye note, a photograph of them together, the only one she had, taken by a street photographer in 1977, and a book of poetry he'd given her with annotations in his handwriting. She'd read his note over and over, searching for answers that weren't there. And she'd wonder, where was he? Did he think of her? Had he loved her at all, or had it been a lie? Years passed. Sophie grew up and became a teacher. Thomas became an architect. Marie followed Claire's footsteps into art restoration. Henri retired from medicine. They bought a house in Provence with a garden where Claire grew roses. The same roses Vincent used to bring her. Claire was content. Her life was full. She had love, different from what she'd felt for Vincent, but real nonetheless. She had children and grandchildren. Had purpose. But she never forgot Vincent Moreau. Never stopped wondering. Never quite healed from the wound his departure had left. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in October 2025, 47 years after he left, his letter arrived. Claire sits in her garden, surrounded by roses, holding the letter. Her granddaughter calls to her, but Claire doesn't hear. She's lost in Vincent's words, written in the elegant script she knows better than her own. The letter reads, "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, I am dead. Truly dead. Not the half-death I lived through. Our time together, but gone from this world entirely. I arranged for this letter to be delivered upon my final death, whenever that should come. It has come now, it seems. I have so much to tell you. Truths I should have spoken in 1978 but didn't have the courage to voice. Lies I told to protect you that only caused more pain. Explanation that comes 47 years too late, but which I hope will bring you some measure of peace. Claire, I loved you. I love you still, even now, even in death. You were the greatest joy of my very long existence, and losing you was the greatest sorrow. Everything I did, staying with you, leaving you, was done out of love. I know that doesn't make it forgivable, but it makes it true. Let me start at the beginning. My actual beginning. I was born in 1698 in Marseille. My father was a merchant, my mother a seamstress. I had a sister, Charlotte, who died of fever at age 6. I had a normal childhood, a normal youth. I studied at university, became a professor of history in Paris, fell in love with a woman named Isabel. We were to be married in the summer of 1730. I was 32 years old. I had my whole life ahead of me. Then, on a June night in 1729, I was attacked walking home from the library. Creature from nightmare, I had no other words for it then, drained my blood and left me for dead in an alley. I should have died. Instead, I transformed into something else. Something immortal. Something monstrous. I woke 3 days later in a stranger's cellar. The stranger was a vampire named Antoine, and he explained what I'd become, a creature that lives on blood, that cannot age, that cannot die except through very specific means. A vampire. I was horrified. Suicidal. I tried to kill myself dozens of times in those first years. But I learned that vampires are notoriously difficult to kill. We heal from almost anything. We endure. I broke off my engagement to Isabel, told her I was sick, contagious, that she needed to stay away. She tried to visit. I refused her. She eventually married someone else, had children, died at age 73. I attended her funeral in disguise, mourning a life we could have had. For 200 years after that, I lived alone. I traveled. I studied. I watched human history unfold from the margins. I loved a few times, always other vampires, never mortals, because loving mortals meant watching them age and die. Until you. I met you in September 1977. I'd been living in Paris for a decade, teaching at the Sorbonne under a false identity, trying to live among humans without getting too close. And then I saw you in that bookshop, looking for a text on Renaissance, painting, and everything changed. You knocked over those books. I helped you gather them. Our fingers touched, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 centuries. Hope. I should have walked away. Should have recognized the danger immediately. You were mortal, young, full of life. Everything I couldn't give you. But Claire, you were also brilliant and passionate and beautiful and kind. You made me feel human. Again. Made me forget, for moments at a time, what I really was. I told myself it would be brief. A few weeks. A month. Just enough to remember what connection felt like. Then I'd disappear before you got too attached. But I fell in love with you. Completely. Irrevocably. In a way I'd never loved anyone in 247 years. You weren't just a distraction or a temporary comfort. You were everything. Those 14 months we had together were the happiest of my entire existence. Every moment with you was precious. The way you'd explain the chemical processes of art restoration with such passion. The way you'd fall asleep reading in my arms. The way you'd dance around the apartment to records, trying to teach me modern music. I never told you I'd danced to the original compositions of pieces you considered old. The way you looked at me like I was someone worth loving. I wanted to give you everything. Marriage, children, a normal life. But Claire, I couldn't. I'm sterile. All vampires are. I can't age. I'll look 32 forever. I can't eat normal food. Can't tolerate sunlight for long periods. Can't have photographs taken without them blurring strangely. Can't live a normal life. By May 1978, you were talking about our future. You wanted to marry me, have my children, grow old together in Provence. All the beautiful, normal things that mortals can have together. And I realized I couldn't give you any of it. I couldn't marry you without revealing what I was. Couldn't have children with you. Couldn't grow old with you. You would age and I wouldn't. And in 20 years people would think I was your son. In 40 years, your grandson. I had 2 choices. Tell you the truth about what I was and risk you being terrified of me, or leave and let you build the life you deserved with someone who could give you everything. I chose to leave. Not because I stopped loving you. I never stopped. But because I loved you too much to condemn you to a life with a monster. You deserved marriage. And children and normalcy. You deserved someone who would age alongside you. Who would give you the future you dreamed of. I couldn't be that person. So I left you the apartment, the money, and a coward's. No. I left you free to find someone else. Someone better. Did I break your heart? Yes. I know I did. I broke mine too. But Claire, you rebuilt. You found Henri. You had children. You had the life I could never have given you. And watching you live that life, yes, I watched from a distance for years, was both agonizing and beautiful. I saw you marry Henri in 1983. I was there, in the back of the church, in disguise. I saw you smile at him, saw him look at you with such devotion, and I knew I'd made the right choice. He could give you what I couldn't. I saw you pregnant with Sophie, watched you cradle your newborn daughter. The joy on your face. That joy would never have been possible with me. I saw you build a life in Provence. A beautiful life, full of love and laughter. And roses. You always did love roses. And I was happy for you. Devastated for myself, but happy for you. Because Claire, you deserved that life. You deserved to be loved by someone who could meet you in mortality, who could give you children and grandchildren and a natural ending. I couldn't give you any of that. I could only give you eternal youth and blood, and darkness, and you deserved light. So I stayed away. For 47 years, I loved you from a distance. I never stopped. Through all my years since leaving you, and there have been many, I never loved anyone else. You were it for me. My one perfect love in nearly 300 years of existence. Now I'm dying. Truly dying. A vampire hunter finally succeeded where time could not. It doesn't matter how. What matters is that I'm leaving this world, and I needed you to know the truth before I go. I'm sorry I left without explanation. I'm sorry I broke your heart. I'm sorry for all the pain I caused. But Claire, I'm not sorry I loved you. Loving you was the most human thing I did in my vampire existence. You reminded me that I was once a man. That underneath the monster, there was still something capable of genuine feeling. You were my light in centuries of darkness. You were proof that even something as cursed as me could experience grace. I hope you've had a beautiful life. I hope Henri loved you well. I hope your children brought you joy. I hope you never truly needed me the way I needed you. But I also hope that sometimes, late at night, you thought of me, wondered where I was, remembered that bookshop in 1977 and how perfectly our hands fit together. Because Claire, I thought of you every single night for 47 years. You were my last thought before sleep and my first upon waking. You were the thing that made immortality bearable. Now I'm dying, and I find myself believing in things I stopped believing in centuries ago. I'm believing that there's something after this, some place where souls go, some heaven or eternity where monsters might be forgiven and lovers might reunite. I'm believing that when you die, many years from now, I hope, peacefully and surrounded by family, I'll be waiting for you. I don't know if vampires have souls. I don't know if someone like me is allowed in whatever comes after, but I'm choosing to believe that love transcends even death. That what we had was real, enough, pure enough, to continue somewhere beyond this mortal world. So wait for me, Claire. Live your beautiful life. Love your husband and your children. Grow old gracefully. Die peacefully when your time comes. And then find me. I'll be waiting. I'll wait 1,000 years if I have to. I'll wait in whatever comes after this, hoping that you'll recognize me again the way you did in that bookshop, hoping that we'll get a second chance in a place where mortality doesn't matter and I can finally give you the forever I always wanted to give you. Until then, know this: you were loved. Completely. Eternally. By a monster who became human through loving you. Thank you for the 14 months. Thank you for reminding me what it meant to truly live. Thank you for being the light in my darkness. I love you. I will always love you. even in death, even in whatever comes after. Wait for me, my darling Claire. I'll be the one with roses. Yours eternally, Vincent. P.S. The apartment in Paris is yours forever, legally. Do with it what you will. But I've left something for you there, hidden behind the false panel in the Louis XV desk. A gift. One I should have given you in 1978, but didn't have the courage to offer. It's a choice. You'll understand when you find it. Until we meet again, mon amour. Claire reads the letter 3 times. Then 4. Then 5. Tears stream down her face, landing on the paper, smudging Vincent's perfect script. He was a vampire. All those oddities she'd noticed but explained away. The cold skin, the avoidance of sunlight, the impossible historical knowledge. They weren't quirks. They were symptoms of something inhuman. He loved her. He left because he loved her. He watched her build a life without him because he loved her enough to let her go. He's been dead for, she checks the postmark, 1 day. After nearly 300 years of existence, Vincent Moreau is gone from the world. And he used his final moments to explain himself to her. Grandmere. Claire's granddaughter tugs at her sleeve. Why are you crying? Claire wipes her tears, folds the letter carefully. Just remembering someone I knew a long time ago, ma chérie. Someone who died? Yes. Someone who died loving me. Henri appears in the garden doorway. Claire, dinner's ready. Are you all right? Claire looks at her husband. Good, steady Henri who has loved her faithfully for 42 years. Who gave her children. Who built a life with her. Who never once asked about the box she kept hidden, the photographs she sometimes looked at late. At night, the part of her heart that belonged to someone else. I'm fine, Claire says. I just received a letter from an old friend. He passed away. I'm sorry, mon cœur. Anyone I know? No. Someone from before we met. It was a long time ago. That night, after dinner, after the grandchildren are put to bed, after Henri falls asleep beside her, Claire reads Vincent's letter again by lamplight. Tries to imagine him as a vampire. Tries to reconcile the gentle man who brought her roses with a creature that feeds on blood. She can't. He was just Vincent, the man she loved. The man who loved her enough to leave. And now he's dead. Truly dead. Waiting for her, he says. Believing in an afterlife where they might reunite. Claire wants to believe that too. Wants to imagine that when her time comes, Vincent will be there with roses, looking 32 forever, ready to give her the eternity he couldn't give her in life. But there's something else in the letter. The postscript. Something hidden in Paris. A choice. Claire decides. She'll go to Paris. One more time. To the apartment she hasn't visited in 40 years. To find whatever Vincent left for her. Because even after all this time, even after a lifetime with Henri, even after 3 children and 6 grandchildren and 47 years, she still loves Vincent Moreau. And she needs to know what choice he's offering her. Claire tells Henri she needs a week in Paris. Art restoration consultation at the Louvre, she says. It's a lie, but a small one. Henri doesn't question it. She takes the train to Paris alone. The apartment in the Marais is exactly as she left it in 1980 when she moved to Provence. She'd kept it all these years. Couldn't bring herself to sell it. Visited occasionally, always feeling Vincent's presence in every room. Now she unlocks the door and steps into the past. The furniture is covered in dust sheets. The air is stale. But nothing has changed. It's preserved like a museum to a love that ended 47 years ago. Claire walks to the Louis XV desk. Runs her hand over the carved wood. Vincent said there was a false panel. She'd never known that. She searches carefully, finds it after 10 minutes. A section of the ornate backing that slides away when pressed at the right angle. Behind it is a small compartment. Inside, a wooden box. Old. Ornate. Locked. No, wait. Not locked. There's a note attached. The key is in the book of Verlaine. Poetry I Gave You. Page 47, line 12. Claire has that book in Provence. She'd kept it all these years. She remembers. It's in the hidden box in her closet. Vincent's goodbye note, their photograph. The poetry book. She calls her daughter Sophie. Can you do me a favor? In my closet, there's a box on the top shelf. Inside is a book of poetry. Can you read me line 12 from page 47? Sophie, bless her, doesn't ask questions. There's rustling then. Grandmere, it's not a line of poetry. It's a number. 1730. 1730. The year Vincent was turned into a vampire. Claire hangs up, returns to the wooden box. There's a combination lock she hadn't noticed. She enters 1-7-3-0. The box opens. Inside, 2 vials of dark liquid, a letter, and a photograph of Claire from 1978 that she never knew existed. Vincent must have taken it secretly. She reads the new letter. It's short. Claire, if you found this, you've read my confession. You know what I was. And you're faced with a choice I never had the courage to offer you in person. These vials contain my blood. Vampire blood. If consumed, it will transform a human into a vampire. It's a painful process, 3 days of agony, but at the end, you would be immortal. You would stop aging. You would become what I was. I'm offering you what I never offered in life, the choice to join me. Not in this world, I'm dead now, but in preparation for whatever comes after. I don't know if vampires have souls. I don't know if there's an afterlife. But if there is, and if I'm there, I want you to have the option of finding me as an equal. Not as a mortal who aged and died while I stayed young, but as an immortal. My companion through eternity. The choice is yours, entirely yours. If you drink the blood now, you'll transform. You'll become a vampire. You'll have to leave Henri and your children. They can't know what you are. You'll have to live in shadows, feed on blood, exist outside. Normal human life. It's a terrible gift. A curse disguised as an option. I know that. But it's also freedom. And if you choose it, when you die eventually, vampires can be killed as I was. I believe you'll find me waiting. Not as a mortal woman and an immortal man, but as 2 immortal souls, finally able to love without time. As an enemy. The other option, leave the vials here. Live your mortal life. Die naturally. And hope that I'm right about the afterlife. Hope that we'll reunite there anyway. That love transcends even the boundaries of species and mortality. Either way, I'll wait for you. Mortal or immortal, human or vampire, you're mine. And I'm yours. This gift just gives you the choice I never had. Choose wisely, mon amour. V. Claire sits in the dusty apartment, holding 2 vials of vampire blood, facing the most impossible choice of her life. She could become a vampire. Could drink Vincent's blood right now, suffer through 3 days of transformation, emerge immortal. She'd have to leave her family. Henri, Sophie, Thomas, Marie, the grandchildren. They'd mourn her. She'd have to fake her death, disappear, live in shadows for however long until a vampire hunter or accident ended her existence. But when she died, finally died, Vincent would be waiting, and they'd have eternity together in whatever comes after. 2 vampires, 2 immortal souls, equal at last. Or she could leave the vials here, return to Provence, live out her mortal years with Henri and her family, die naturally at 80 or 90, and hope Just hope that Vincent was right. That there's something after death. That love transcends mortality. That she'll find him waiting anyway, roses in hand, ready to give her the forever they never had in life. Claire is 73 years old. She has lived a good life. A full life. Loves her husband, her children, her grandchildren. She's content. But she has always loved Vincent Moreau. From the moment they met until this very instant, some part of her has belonged to him. She looks at the vials, at the photograph of her younger self, at the letter in Vincent's perfect script, and she makes her choice. Claire Beaumont returns to Provence 3 days later. She walks slowly, carefully, adjusting to sensations that are too intense, too overwhelming. Everything is different. Colors are brighter. Sounds are sharper. She can hear Henry's heartbeat from across the room, can smell the blood running through her grandchildren's veins, can feel the hunger, constant, gnawing, terrible. She chose transformation. Drank Vincent's blood in that dusty Paris apartment. Suffered through 3 days of agony as her body died and was reborn. Emerged as something other than human. Why? Because 47 years wasn't enough. Because she needed more time, even if that time came after death. Because Vincent offered her a choice, and for once, she chose him. Now she's 73 and immortal. She looks 73, that won't change. She'll be a 73-year-old vampire forever. Not ideal, but it's what she has. She has to leave Henri. She knows that. Can't stay. Can't pretend to keep aging when she's frozen now. Can't risk the hunger around her family. She plans it carefully. Tells Henri she's sick. Terminal cancer, she claims. Lies. To her children, too. Says she wants to die in Paris, in the apartment where she was happiest. They protest, but she insists. Let me go peacefully, Claire tells Henri. You've given me 42 beautiful years. Let me have this. Henri, kind Henri, agrees. They say goodbye. It breaks her heart. She loves him, not the way she loved Vincent, but truly. He deserves better than this deception. But there's no other way. Claire returns to Paris. Fakes her death with help from a vampire she contacted, one of Vincent's old friends who agreed to help her for Vincent's sake. There's a funeral. Her children mourn. Henri grieves. The world thinks Claire Beaumont died of cancer at 73. But she's alive. Immortal. Learning to be a vampire at an age when most people are preparing for death. It's hard. Harder than she imagined. The hunger is constant. The enhanced senses are overwhelming. The isolation is crushing. She can't contact her family, can't let them know she's still alive. But she endures. For Vincent. For the promise of reunion. For the eternity he believed in. She lives for 20 more years. 20 years of learning to be a vampire. 20 years of feeding on blood bags and avoiding sunlight and existing in shadows. 20 years of waiting for death to finally take her so she can find Vincent. In 2045, at the age of 93, appearing 73, Claire Beaumont faces a vampire hunter. She doesn't run, doesn't fight. She's ready to find out if Vincent was right. If there's something after this. If he's waiting. The hunter stakes her through the heart. Claire's last thought is of roses. Of a bookshop in 1977. Of hands touching. Of a love that transcended time and death and the boundaries between mortal and immortal. And then she's gone. Claire opens her eyes. She's standing in a garden. Not her garden in Provence. Not any garden she recognizes. But it's beautiful. Roses everywhere, climbing walls and covering archways, perfuming the air with sweetness. She looks down at herself. She's not 73 anymore. Not even 26. She's ageless. Whole. Perfect. Claire. She turns. Vincent stands 10 feet away. He looks 32, as he always did. But there's something different about him now. A lightness. The weight of immortality gone from his eyes. "You came," he says. "I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure if vampires get an afterlife. But here we are." Claire runs to him. They collide, holding each other for the first time in 67 years. He's warm now. Actually warm. The cold of vampirism is gone. "You were right," Claire says through tears. "About everything. About love. Transcending. About meeting again. About waiting. I waited every day. Hoping you'd come. Hoping I was right. Hoping love was enough. It was enough. Vincent, it was always enough." They kiss. And it feels like 1977 again. Like that first night at Café de Flore. Like every perfect moment they had together, concentrated into one eternal instant. "I'm sorry I left," Vincent whispers. "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand why. I'm sorry we didn't have more time. We have time now. We have forever." And they do. However the afterlife works, whatever this place is, heaven or something else, they have it together. No more mortality to separate them. No more aging or death or impossible choices. Just love. Eternal. Perfect. Whole. Claire and Vincent Moreau walk through the garden of roses, hand in hand, finally able to give each other the forever they always deserved. And somewhere far below, in the mortal world, Henri Dubois receives a letter. It arrived in the mail 47 years after his wife's death, sent on a delay. She arranged before she died. The letter reads, "Dearest Henri, by now I've been dead for many years. I hope you've lived well. I hope you remarried, found happiness. You deserved that. I need to tell you something I never told you in life. Before you, there was someone else. A man named Vincent. I loved him with a passion I never felt again. When he left me, he broke something inside me that never fully healed. But you, Henri, you gave me everything. A home, children, a life, security and comfort and steady love. You gave me 42 years of happiness I wouldn't have had without you. I want you to know that I loved you, differently than I loved him, but truly. You were my companion, my partner, my friend. You made my life beautiful. But I also want you to know that when I died believing I would find him again. That love doesn't end. That somewhere, somehow, we'd reunite. I hope I was right. I hope he was waiting. I hope we finally got our forever. But Henri, I also hope you find your forever, whether in this life or the next. You deserve that. You always did. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for giving me a life. Thank you for being steady when I needed steady. I hope we meet again someday, in whatever comes after. And I hope you forgive me for the part of my heart that never quite belonged to you. With love and gratitude, Claire." Henri reads the letter in his house in Provence, now 94 years old, surrounded by children and grandchildren. He's lived a good life, a full life. He loved Claire until the day she died and for 47 years after. He folds the letter carefully, puts it in a box with her other belongings, and smiles. "I hope you found him, mon cœur," Henri whispers. "I hope it was everything you hoped for." And somewhere in a garden of roses, in a place beyond death, Claire hears him. And she smiles. Because yes, Henri, it was everything, and more.